finally got your first leadership gig, loving the new role, but feeling the pressure of your new responsibilities and all that expectation to perform? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. Crossing the chasm from a technical role to leadership, from doing stuff to managing and leading people, is the toughest challenge any leader must make. Welcome to the Human Edge Show, the podcast dedicated to help you do just that, successfully cross the doing to leading chasm. Campbell Such here, Chief Chasm Crossing Guide. I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. I want to help you learn those lessons much more easily by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have already figured it out. You'll get great actionable tips, strategies, and techniques to make the transition so much easier and faster for you. Now let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of the Human Edge Show. Today I'm privileged and honoured to have Cathy Sullivan from CIO New Zealand on the show. Welcome, Cathy. It's great to have you here.
Kia ora. It's a pleasure to be here.
Cathy Sullivan is editor for CIO New Zealand based in Auckland, a native of, if you haven't guessed already from that brief intro, the few words that she said, she's from Ireland. Cathy has worked in digital, print and broadcast media for almost 2 decades, in newsrooms in New Zealand and across Europe. She has a keen interest in emerging and disruptive technologies, and she's in a great place with her current role to be involved in all of that stuff. So welcome, Cathy. It's great to have you on the show. And what's something that not many people would know about you?
So this is a bit of a random one. I am an open book. People who know me pretty well, but one thing they may not know about me is that I'm actually related to royalty. So a very proud fact in my family is that one of our ancestors is Grace Kelly's grandfather. So Grace Kelly, who went on to marry the Prince of Monaco. So that's my little claim to fame.
Wow. It's the Monaco Grand Prix ran last weekend. And it was interesting. As I was watching the Grand Prix, I thought about for some reason Grace Kelly popped up in my thoughts, and I wondered what had changed since she was involved. Have you kept close to that? Would you know what might have changed since then?
Oh, no, I wouldn't at all. Yeah, I've been to Monaco once, but that was a long time ago with a backpack. So, I would have no idea since. Yeah,
the crazy glitz and glamour of Formula One on top of the craziness of Monaco. It's an amazing place. So, Cathy, just to change gears slightly, and for the new leaders and people that are in new leadership roles, if we could just cast your mind back to your early days in leadership, what are some of the lessons, or perhaps just paint a picture of what your transition into leadership was, and then perhaps some of the early lessons that you learned that you think might be really helpful for someone in a new leadership role?
So I guess when I look back, I've always been one of those people who've either been tapped on the shoulder or put my hand up for something, even since my school days. I was that, kid when I was 11, that was the school bank manager and, the person who was on the school council, and very much, a campaigner and very, eager to connect with people and get things done. So I've always kind of had that mindset of not necessarily as, I'm a leader, but, really, really keen to get things moving along. And I guess my first leadership role in a paid sense was when I went from being a homepage editor at Stuff in Wellington, and, I was very much concentrating on my own job and dealing with various people throughout the day. And then I got shoulder tapped for a role at the New Zealand Herald as deputy editor. And that was quite a gear change for me, because I had never managed people before in a formal sense. So taking up that role of deputy editor at the Herald Online, I suddenly had 10 direct reports, and some of whom were a lot more experienced than I was. And again, being, an immigrant and, not having that grounding that other people had of, 20 plus years of growing up in New Zealand, it was a little bit daunting for me moving from that role into that leadership role.
Yeah. And it is really interesting, because a lot of new leaders, when they go into those roles, have come out of a team where they've performed really well in a technical sense and been promoted into the leadership of that team. And then they often do end up with more senior people having to manage more senior people who may not see them as someone they should respect and listen to. How did you manage those people and those challenges where you were the newbie, both in New Zealand from a cultural and national perspective, and also new in the role?
Well, for me, what worked really well was just having individual chats with everyone in the team. So literally the first few weeks, taking everyone out for a cup of tea or a coffee, finding out about them and their experience and, their roles and what they enjoyed about their roles, what they didn't enjoy about their roles. And it takes time. That stuff you have to really build up trust and connection with people that you're managing with and working with. And that's not an instant thing. It does take effort and it does take time to build up those relationships. So that's definitely what worked for me. Seeking their opinion and not going in there going, I have this role, so I have all the answers, because you don't. And you don't, there's often things that they will be much better at you than you are. And they will have, views on things that you do need to listen to their perspectives. So I think that's definitely the key thing when you are first step into a leadership role, is to get to know the people and to really understand their perspectives on things.
Sounds like a really smart way to go in, and and it's perhaps something that you did naturally, but which may not come naturally to a lot of people, because one of the things that I often see is when people are promoted into new leadership roles, suddenly they feel they have to be the boss, and it changes a whole bunch of stuff in terms of the way they operate and the way they connect with people. But one of the points I'd just like to pick up on what you just talked about then was you don't have to have you don't have all the answers, and you don't need to have all the answers. One of the challenges is that as leaders, often we feel we do have to have all the answers. And there's so many people in the team, you can't know all your blind spots, and you can't know all of the answers to all of the questions. And plenty of people have better ideas and thoughts that even if it's not the whole answer, it just brings some more context and roundness to it. What's been your approach with making sure that people feel comfortable to talk and give you that feedback and provide answers to questions where they might look at you as a position of authority where you're expected to have the answer? How do you cope with that?
It's a hard one, right? It is a hard one, because sometimes you actually may have the answer to something, but because of there might be some sensitivity around that information that you aren't in a position at that moment to share with them. So an example is, I've been through a few redundancy situations where, I knew that we were planning at that point for to shape the team in a different way. And, people will have questions, and there are certain times where you cannot share that information because of where you are at in that stage of a transformation or an initiative that may impact the team. And sometimes you just don't have the answers. So, just being open with people and just saying, I don't have the information at this point, or, I'll get back to you on that. And it can be hard. And sometimes as well, you want people to figure out things for themselves. Yeah. So, you shouldn't do everyone's job for them. And sometimes people have to get to a stage as well where they can figure things out for themselves. And it is a balancing act sometimes, knowing when to step in and help someone with something, and knowing when they actually need to do it for themselves and learn and either succeed in that or fail and learn from that failing.
Yeah. Yes. And that's the tightrope that you walk. And because ultimately, if you end up as a leader doing it all yourself, well, you're not really leading, are you? You're still back doing stuff. And ultimately, your role is to help other people help you get the job done for your team and for your organization.
And it certainly can be hard, if it is something that you love doing. So, when I moved from, doing the doing and being an editor and coming up with headlines and, checking facts and all of that, I really thrived and loved doing that. But sometimes as well, you have to, let go of that and be okay with other people doing that when you're no longer responsible for that, and letting them do it in their own way.
Yeah. Yes, and just because it's different to the way you might do it doesn't mean it's bad. It might even be better. And even if it is, then you can come to them and have a conversation around some of the other things they might have thought about that they didn't think about contextually with your bigger picture and experience. It is really hard for many leaders that come out of technical roles into leadership to let go of that doing that stuff, and especially the stuff they love. And one of the things that I've found in my career is that if I can work out the things that I love doing and do more of that, and find other people that can do that love doing the things that I'm either not good at or don't like doing, then that's really nice. And how do you go about identifying the strengths in the people in your team, and then building a team around, and then building a team in whatever shape you might build a team?
Again, it's just getting to know those people, really having good conversations with them about what they like doing, and also just keeping an eye on their work and their output as well. And, because sometimes things people say they like doing, they might not necessarily be the best at, and you can help them on that journey to make them better in some cases. Really, I'm a big fan of, knowing your own strengths as well, and your own weaknesses and things that you're not good at, and really encouraging the team as well to explore that. And that might be through, different courses, or there are online tools that can help people as well identify their strengths and things that they need to work on. And then having those conversations with them when you're coaching them, or through performance conversations around the things that they are strong at, and the things they enjoy doing, and the areas that they're either not interested in or need some help with. So a lot of conversations, and really tapping into the passion. You see it, in people's eyes when they light up when they're talking about something that they really enjoy doing, or, equally, you can sometimes tell when there's something that they're really struggling with, and they might need some more support with.
Yeah, and so what I'm taking from that is a real focus, not on just the words that are being said and what you're talking about, but also that whole reading the person and looking for the sparks of interest and the sparks of frustration and challenge, and then being able to make decisions accordingly to how you might be able to step in and help them with their roles.
And it might be just, it might just be a really open conversation saying, Campbell, tell me, what does a good day at work look like to you? And then just, like, I'm a prolific note taker. So if I was having that kind of conversation with you, I would, take a lot of notes and pick up on those positive signals that you said that is a good day at work, i.e. this is the kind of thing that drives and motivates me.
Yeah. Well, that's really insightful, because then it's sort of like, are you sort of saying, tell me what your perfect day would look like, or what a great day would look like for you? Was that how you?
I don't think there's ever a perfect day, but tell me what a good day looks like. You know, you can end that day and go, you know what, that was a great day. I was really productive. I nailed that meeting, and I hit my whatever I was aiming for on that particular project. And I think it's really good to focus in on what is working.
Yeah, that's really insightful. You talked about coaching, and there's a lot of talk these days about leaders and the value of coaching. The command and control approach of the industrial sort of age seems to have run its day, and even though it feels like it's a much more powerful way to go, it actually ends up working against you. And that coaching seems to be such a powerful way of bringing people along and helping you achieve the goals for yourself and for your team and for them, and growing the organization. What's been your approach to coaching? Have you had some help with how to coach? Is it something that you've just learned in your journey? As a new leader, how would you talk to a new leader that was in a new role, and talk to them about coaching and how they might coach their direct reports?
I mean, for me, it has been learning from past leaders who've been influential on my career. Also, I've done some leadership training, which has been extremely helpful. Courses through various organizations that I've worked for, but also just I think it's important when you are coaching to reflect on what works, what's going to work for this person, because everyone is different. So being able to flex your leadership style depending on where that person is and what they may need at the time, and depending on the situation that they're in as well and what they need coaching with. Because if it's a staff issue, for example, and you're dealing with, I don't know, bad behavior or something like that someone's dealing with, that can be a very different situation to if someone's really struggling because of time management, or they just have a lot on their plate. So it really depends on the situation and the individual and how you think they're going to respond. But again, having that relationship with the person and knowing what their how they may react or what they respond to, I think is key to that. And it differs depending on the individual.
Yeah. And it keeps coming back to that common theme that I'm hearing, which is make sure you really understand your team and the people as individuals in the team, what motivates them, what they're good at, what fires them up, what they're challenged with. And then you can have that, you can then work with them to really help them overcome their challenges or work through their challenges, understand the lessons out of their mistakes.
And I really think, it is, you're there to provide support for your people. So you're not going to solve all their problems or have all the answers for them, but you need to be a sounding board for them. And they need to be able to trust in you to have an open conversation with you around the things that they're struggling with. And, that's not always easy, because sometimes the things that they may be struggling at, it might be something that you've done or, something that you have influence over as well. So, being open to also, being criticized yourself or being told, we need more clarity on X, or, you don't have a vision around, we need this. So, sometimes it can be hard as well, because, the feedback that you may be getting is it's on you.
Yeah. How do you cope with that? Because one of the things that I've found really powerful is to seek feedback and to try and take it on board. I mean, we all have blind spots, and feedback from others can really help us. But one of the sort of on the flip side of that coin, every time I get feedback that I don't want to hear, even though I need to hear it, it really stings and it's really hard, and it's very easy to then dismiss it or make up an excuse to yourself for why it might be irrelevant feedback. How do you cope with getting really good feedback that might not be what you want to hear?
And I think just having that context as well, like why that individual is giving you that feedback, and is it coming from a space of they want things to improve, or, is it a case of they are, they may be unhappy with something, but there's another motivating factor behind them giving you that feedback. But I think, my belief is that most of the feedback that you get from people, it comes from a good place where they want things to improve or change, and to kind of take that sting out of it, to focus on okay, well, this is actually a gift. Getting this bad feedback is actually a gift, because it will help me change things for this person and for my organization, or at least give me that framework in what they're operating in.
Yeah, that's a really good way to frame it up. It's a gift, and it doesn't even have to be delivered in a way that's necessarily positive. It might be a really upset person giving you that gift, which might make it even harder to take on board and unwrap and look at it and go, wow, there's something in here that I can really benefit from as a leader or as a person, or helping my team do better. Yeah.
It can, but I think as well, if people are upset, it comes from a place where they actually care. They care so much that they are responding in that way. I think the worst thing is people that just have no emotion whatsoever. I actually don't mind when people are upset or angry, because it does mean that they actually care about what they're talking about. So I think just having that empathy and realizing that they come from a place of wanting things to change, and it's on you as a leader to actually reflect on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the the flip side, there's sort of that anger and passion are flip sides of the same coin, but they both, it comes from engagement, not from disengagement. And the worst thing you want is disengagement. And when you look at the stats globally, especially over a survey that Gallup did a few years ago, the stats on disengagement and lack of motivation and engagement in organisations globally is tragic. And even in the US and probably New Zealand, similarly, they're talking as high as only 30% of people are engaged in their roles. So, and that all comes down, most of that comes down, the biggest influence on that comes down to who their manager is and who their leader is. So you've got a lot riding on your shoulders when you're leading a team.
Absolutely. And, it can be quite isolating sometimes, I think. You have sometimes when you're a leader, you have all these people reporting into you who are looking to you, but also, you're reporting up to someone. So I think as well as a leader, it's really important to have someone that you can talk to who's not necessarily someone you report to, but someone who you can have a conversation with and feel safe in either venting about something or, again, having a sounding board. I think that's so important. And it's definitely something I've learned along the way, the importance of having those allies. And so I really think it's important that as a leader that you've got your own support network. It can be quite isolating, having people report into you and you're reporting to someone. And it's so important to have a sounding board and someone that you trust who you can either vent to or seek their opinion on something. And just having that outside perspective for me has been instrumental in helping me through some really challenging situations, either with one of my direct reports or even with a leader at that time who, for one reason or another, we weren't gelling. So really, it's really, really important as a leader, as a new leader, that you do have a support network that's outside of your immediate role.
Yeah. And what's your approach to helping to create that support network and those people around you that may be internal in the organisation, but often aren't, because that's then they're perhaps in a bit more of an objective situation, or can give you some advice where you might, or some input that might not mean that there might be some other agendas going on. What have you done to build those networks and the support around you?
So definitely having an internal person is good. So someone who might be, on the senior leadership team with you, who you have a rapport with. But, again, it takes time to build that rapport with that person. And it might be just, having coffee with them, every couple of weeks and just checking in with them and seeing what's going on with them, and just being, having that shared kind of sounding board for each other and going through the issues. But again, having that circle of trust that, okay, I am talking to Campbell about this, but I know it's not going to go any further, that this is for our discussion only. As well, sometimes, it might be better to, if it is a certain situation and you might be considering, I don't know, leaving an organization, or there's something that it's in your interest to actually not talk about it internally, but there's someone externally that you really trust and can have, get advice from. For me, that has been, previous leaders that I really respect and still have a really good relationship with. They certainly have been people that I felt comfortable with talking about certain situations. So it's just really identifying who are the people you trust, who are the people you respect, and who would you go to for advice.
And also perhaps digging the well before you need it, so that you've built the relationship. It's not done out of a stressful situation. Perhaps one of the questions a new leader might be asking is, well, why would someone do that for me? What have you found that's, what's in it for them, I guess, because it's pretty obvious what's in it for you, which is the support of someone who's maybe been there, done that, and can give you advice based or input based on their experience, but also their connections within the organisation. But what's in it for them that might make it attractive for a leader to reach out to someone in a more experienced position that might make it easier for that person to say yes?
I guess it's, for me, and certainly when I've been, a support to other people who are kind of coming up the ranks, it's because I know what it feels like when you need that support and that, advice and just being a sounding board for someone. So it's really about having that relationship and maintaining that relationship. I think, if you leave an organization and if you've had a really good relationship with a leader, then when you leave that organization, try and continue to have a good relationship with that person. It's just really important to keep connected. And I think, the strength of your network really, really serves you in your career, and just knowing who those people are and knowing that they will have your back and you can talk to them in a safe space is just incredibly important.
Yeah, that ability to be able to talk in a safe space, that's probably the key. So you mentioned circle of trust before, so you have absolute trust. One of the things that just occurred to me is, what, in terms of what's in it for the more senior person that might be supporting you, is it also gives them some visibility into the rest of the organisation that they might not otherwise get, because people may not be feeding them the whole story, or a view of it that might not be broad enough and deep enough for them to be able to make really good decisions, and may mean that they miss some stuff. So even within an organisation, could be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think if it is someone that you're talking to who's within your organization, they may have a different context to things as well that can give you clarity around, what you need to do, or things you may need to think about that you hadn't considered, because they do have that other context that you may not be aware of.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Just to change gears slightly, Cathy, in your role in NZ CIO, when you CIO for New Zealand, you must have contact with a broad range of leaders right across New Zealand industry and right across the levels of experience and seniority. Are there any sort of strong themes that you're seeing recently that have come out of the challenges that we've had over the last couple of years around what makes leaders more successful or more effective in the current sort of hybrid environment we find ourselves in, and trying to manage people remotely?
Yeah, it's an incredible privilege that I have, talking to so many CIOs and CDOs and IT managers, and, a wealth of people who are really senior in their industry. And a lot of the themes that are coming through, talent shortage is a big issue at the moment. So not having, having so many roles, but actually not having people to fill those roles. Getting more diversity into roles as well. So the IT industry, only I think less than 8% are Maori and Pacifica, which is just a shocking statistic. And also getting more women into IT roles. So that's definitely a focus for a lot of the leaders that I speak to. And when it comes to remote and hybrid work, it is a real challenge, particularly less so when it was 100%, in the office, or 100% working from home. But I think a lot of leaders are struggling with that hybrid model, because, you might be having an all hands meeting and you have, put on catering and then suddenly someone's like, oh, well, that's on a Wednesday. That's my work from home day. So just some of those kind of tricky conversations are coming up. And, it is a challenge, I think, for leaders to try and manage that. But I don't think we're ever going to go back to 100% in office. I think, this hybrid way of working is here to stay in some form. And, people really embrace that. And I think it's given people a lot more flexibility in their lives. There's definitely been such an appreciation over the last 2 years about the importance of having, good work-life, not necessarily balance, but good work-life interactions. And, if you have a good home life going on, then you have a good work life going on. And if things are going poorly at work, then, you can bring that back into your home life as well. So I think there's been a lot more consciousness of the importance of having a really, really good setup for your employees, and making sure that they can thrive whether they are in the office or whether they're working from home.
Yep. And is that, when you say a good setup, is that having the connectivity, the technology at home that allows them to either use their own gear or company supplied gear? Is that what you mean by setup?
Well, I think setup as in, yes, absolutely. I think the tech itself is just a hygiene factor. You need to make sure that your people are connected and have the tools, but also a good setup in terms of flexibility. So, things have changed, and people are a lot more conscious now about if they're unwell, staying home, and if they have kids who are unwell, that they're staying home and being looked after. So I think having that mindset shift of it's not necessarily 9 to 5 anymore, and there does need to be a lot more flexibility. If someone needs to start early and finish early, or have a couple of hours during the day because they want to do the pickup for school, so I think there's a lot more consciousness about that amongst leaders these days.
Yeah. And is there anything that stands out that you've seen across your visibility of the technology space and the leaders that you deal with that seems to be working specifically really well? Any thoughts in that space? I know that's a huge question, so if the answer's no, that's fine.
I think a lot of people are trying different things. And I spoke to someone recently whose team is all remote and they're globally. His team is all around the world, and he's actually never met any of them in person, which, as a people person, baffles me, because I think you should always bring someone out for a cup of tea or a coffee when you can. But for him, it was, he checks in with his team all the time, and he even has a remote, basically like a walkie-talkie situation set up in his home. So if someone needs him during the day and he's, working on something else, that they can contact him. Just some other things that, I thought were quite cool during the pandemic when everyone was in lockdown. One leader I spoke to, they had a virtual Winter Olympics, which I thought was quite a neat thing. And just those, little ways of connecting with people, in a fun way. But I think it's still quite tricky, this hybrid situation, when you have people in the office and people still online. And I think, I don't think anyone quite has the silver bullet for it and what's going to make it perfect. Yeah. It really just depends on the organization and the people and getting the best out of them.
Yeah, that's right. It comes down to, there's a whole lot of variables. Went to a presentation the other day, and the guy that was speaking was talking, they'd run a survey across the US and Australia around a bunch of stuff. But one of the things that and he was giving some feedback on the results of that. But one of the things that he talked about that was just like, wow, because it kind of triggered this thought to me that, like, not only are we having to deal with people who are really comfortable in an environment at home and they feel really safe and happy there, and people that really need the social contact and that aren't getting it and they're struggling with it. And then you come back into the office, but there's people that don't necessarily want to come back in. Then there was all the generations. And what it was that really triggered the thought for me was that he said, there's a whole bunch of people that have been employed into organizations since the pandemic started that have never, ever been into the office, an office in their whole lives, ever. Mm. And so they don't even have an experience of what that might be like. And then there's people who have lived, at the opposite end, who have spent almost all of their working life in the office and have barely experienced, except for the last 2 years, working away from the office. And in between that, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that's going on. So it's, there's a whole lot of things that all come to play in this, right? And it's definitely not an easy answer or one size fits all, I could imagine.
Absolutely. And then for those people who, like you say, who've just, their career has started out and has just been working from home, they turn up to the office one day and, even things like, what's the dress code? Is there a dress code, and they rock up in their pajamas or something. There's a whole different, there's all these nuances of working in an office that if you've never experienced that before, that you definitely have to grapple with in those first few months.
Yeah. So note to self as a new leader that, especially for your staff that have never been into the office before, helping them to understand the lay of the land when they're coming back into the office where they may not have, and where there might be, experiencing some real uncomfortableness and uncertainty and possibly fear around, well, what do I do in a place that I've never been to before? And especially if there's an expectation that they must come in, and that will happen from time to time, presumably.
Absolutely. And I think, if you do have staff in that situation, you really need to think through, okay, they started a year ago or 18 months ago, but actually have they had a proper induction? Because it baffles me how poorly inductions are done. And, to your point, actually even knowing the layout of the office, where the bathrooms are, where you go to, get a drink of water, all of that, it's just basic stuff, but you would look like an idiot walking into an office, wandering around going, I've worked here for 18 months, but I don't know where to get a cup of coffee. Can you help me out?
Yeah. So having some empathy and some understanding of the various challenges across the different levels of experience of people and where they've been and what they might need in terms of helping them come back to the office either on a more often or less often basis. So yeah. So just to talk about leading leaders, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of new leaders have is they get selected into their role because they were the best at what they did technically. So they've got a great toolbox of doing stuff tools, and then they've got to get their leadership toolbox underway, and it's a challenge, and often they end up, because the person that put them in the role is so busy and so flat out, and they're struggling to keep up in their own role, or for whatever other reason, they end up being dropped in the deep end and having to sink or swim. Which makes it really challenging for new leaders, especially when they've been really successful technically, and it can lead to a lot of stress and uncomfortableness. And ultimately, for a lot of new leaders that are in that position, they just struggle so much that ultimately they may leave, and you've lost your best technical person, and the team's still leaderless. What are some of the things that you've found when you've been leading leaders that would help them to, when you've appointed someone into a new role or come into a role leading leaders, to help them succeed more comfortably and perhaps make it a lot less likely that they're going to fail? Any thoughts around that?
Well, I think, reassuring that they've been chosen because you believe they can do it, because sometimes I think there is that imposter syndrome where people doubt, they think, oh, I've only been picked because I'm the most senior person here, or I'm very good at what I do. Whereas, I think, when you're picking a leader for your teams, that you do make sure that they do have that people piece, and they really genuinely care about people and getting the best out of them, because otherwise you're setting them up for failure. So being really deliberate in who you're choosing for those team leadership roles, I think, is key. And again, I think just no matter how busy you are, just making sure that you do schedule time with your people to have those debriefs and those conversations, and being a sounding board for them. It needs to be in the diary. You need to make time for your people. However busy you are, they will be there sitting with these issues, and they will be waiting. And then if they see that their whip is cancelled for the fourth time that, quarter, it can be really dispiriting. So, and I know I've been guilty of that in the past. Something will pop up that's urgent and important, and my boss wants me to do this. And we've got, a big project underway, and there'll always be times where, you can't make those meetings, but just really, really making sure it's a priority, that you are setting aside time to talk to your leaders, because it's on you. You really, really have to be a support for them. Not solving all their problems, as I said before, but just making sure that they do have time to talk things through and seek advice, or let something is an issue, because it might be a very small issue at that point, but if you can help them solve that issue, then it stops it becoming a bigger problem along the way.
Yeah. One of the things that I've found through my leadership careers, there's been times with certain managers and leaders that I've had that I've felt uncomfortable to have those kind of conversations. And so perhaps on top of the reassurances also to make sure that it's really clear that this is a safe place to have this. We're still holding you accountable, and we've still got a whole bunch of expectations for you. But, if you don't feel comfortable coming and talking to me, well, then go and find someone else and I'll help you do that. But make it clear that the support's available in the organization.
Yeah. And asking, one thing I've really reflected on, my time leading people, is the questions that I ask people. So, not necessarily, what do you need help with? But, really asking them, digging deep into it. So it might be, how can I support you with that? And what does that support look like? Because sometimes you may feel that you're supporting someone by, letting them get on with it, but actually what they may need right then in that moment is your help. And, you do need to figure out, am I better stepping in right now, or am I better letting them get on with it and then coming back to me and trying to solve it if they haven't been able to do it themselves. So yeah, just really thinking about the questions that you're asking people and how you can ask them in a way to really, really understand the root of the problem and what they're dealing with. Because sometimes, especially, I hate to say it, but men, sometimes men I found they're reluctant to ask for help. And especially if you're managing someone who might be, have more experience in the industry than you do, they might not necessarily want to ask for help. So figuring out what they need help with can sometimes be a challenge. So really digging into asking better questions and really trying to understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, that's really insightful. One of the big challenges with asking questions and seeking help is you might be seen to be incompetent. The whole imposter syndrome thing, that why am I here? Why do they choose me? I'm not good enough. And reaching out for help might be seen as a sign of weakness, particularly, as you talk about men. Well, I mean, I've been there before. I've not wanted to reach out for fear of wanting to be seen weak or not knowing. And yet the flip side of that is actually that's the time you probably need the help the most. And for someone for a leader of that person to be able to recognize that and go, hey, come on, and go past that and see the thing that they're missing is really powerful. And perhaps that's why it's so important, or one of the reasons why it's so important to have both men and women in leadership roles, because they bring different things to the party, right?
Definitely. And, having both perspectives is, it can be amazing, and just getting that different view on things. But for sure. I just think sometimes sometimes men especially need a bit more prodding on what they need help with.
Yeah. So that's really insightful. Fantastic. So, Cathy, just before we wrap up, if you had a billboard that you could put anything on for a new leader or the leader of leaders to help them succeed and make failure much less likely, what would it be?
Well, one thing, I really love this saying, and it's something that I reflect on a lot, is you're responsible for the energy that you bring to a room, and you're responsible for the energy that you take away from the room. So really being conscious when you're going into work, whether it's in a virtual space or in the office, the energy that you're bringing from work, and also the energy that you're bringing home. Are you lying awake at night thinking about issues, and just making sure that you actually are separating the two, but it really is on you. You can choose your emotions, you can choose how you feel about things. So really, really being aware of your emotions at work, I think, is really fundamental to success in leadership. Yeah.
And that's another amazingly insightful comment. So in terms of the energy that you bring with you, is that how you show up when you're at work? And is the energy that you take with you, is that how you show up when you move back away from work into a back home or into a social situation or whatever? Is that what you're talking about, or is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, being really conscious of how you're showing up, how you're presenting yourself to your team, how you're presenting yourself to the other leaders at work. And being positive, I am a relentless optimist, and I think, as a leader, you do need to be positive, not Pollyanna about everything, because obviously not everything is going to be positive all the time. But, having that energy and positivity, I think, is so important. And also, if things aren't going well at work, or, things didn't go your way, just being really conscious about where you bring that energy, whether it be at home or elsewhere. Just being really self-aware. I just really encourage everyone to really, really reflect on how they're feeling and why they're feeling that way.
Yeah, and that's an in the moment thing, isn't it? It's when you leave work to go wherever home is, or wherever you're away from work, is to be mindful and present around where that separation is. And it's not always easy to separate. And, if you wake up at 3:00 in the morning because you've got a problem that you have to solve, how do you, can you do anything about it at the time? No, but maybe if you have a piece of paper beside the bed, you might have some solutions. But ultimately, if you're worrying about something you can't do anything about right then, it's going to take energy out from everything else and from the other people around you. Wow. Cathy, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been awesome having you on the Human Edge show. Really enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to having you back on the show again sometime.
Pleasure.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you have a friend or a colleague who would benefit from this episode, please pass the word along. If you have a friend or a colleague who would not benefit, but you haven't been in touch with them for a while, give them a call. iTunes reviews are great to get the word out and to help me create the show that's most useful for you. And if you're frustrated or having challenges or would like some help, guidance, assistance with your first leadership role, then check out integrationcatalyst.com in the link in the podcast notes below. Or pass this on to your boss to nudge them to get you the help you really need to cross the doing to managing chasm and get you powered up on your leadership and management journey. Oh, and if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, hit subscribe. Until next time.